Welcome to Pacific Center Library Audiobooks. Today, we invite you to listen to Priestess, written and read by Pamela Eakins. We begin with a letter to the reader. Dear sister, welcome to the mystery. Welcome to the amazing unfolding dimensions of time and space. I am thrilled to meet you again in these magical pages, for truly we are one. Here's how writing Priestess began. I spent 5 years in an interfaith seminary. When I was ready to be ordained, my teacher asked me to prepare by meditating on the following question. What was the single most important event in the early Christian church that removed the goddess-oriented religious base and replaced it with a father orientation? Well, let me tell you, my sister, I became this question. I lived it. Suddenly then, veil after veil began to part, and I was sailing through lifetimes of priestesses, past, present, and future. And then a far deeper question emerged. Are we bound by matter, time, and space, as we have been taught to believe? Or are we limited merely by our own perception? And now, my sister, I invite you to journey with me into the field of expanded perception. We will consider all that has been and all that shall be as we step into the lives of holy women in the worlds of Ancient Mesopotamia, Ancient Egypt, the Old Testament, Ancient Greece, Late Antiquity, the Dark Ages, the Reformation, the present, and the future. How many times have we traveled together, my dearest companion? I know you will recognize many of the people and places in this book, and perhaps you will notice, as have I, that young women and men are reaching toward us from the future. They are wide-eyed, confused, innocent, searching, skeptical, and curious. They are looking for direction. They are seeking inspiration. These are the grandchildren of the world yet to come. It is up to us, their ancestors, to challenge and guide them. To our beautiful grandchildren, I dedicate this book. I hear you calling, my children, and I am crossing the mystery of death and birth to hold you in the heart of love. Fear not. Daily, we learn that every single thing is possible. Signed, Sister Pamela. Part 1, The Mosque. Chapter 1, The Mosque. California, late 20th century. This is the truth about what happened. Cross-legged and barefoot, I sat in the mosque. I sat there with the Sufi master, highest of high, swaying in prayer. He, with white turban, Morocco brown tunic and pants, gray beard, long and cascading like a scraggly waterfall down his chest, bare feet, chanting and breathing, Allah, 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 as if he had chanted this name from the moment of his birth. Facing each other in mirrored image, cross-legged, eyes closed, chanting, praying, breath in and breath out, me, black blouse, long black skirt, feet which had borne shoes within the last hour, white and gold hair falling loosely on my shoulders, cross-legged, swaying, swaying, chanting with the Master. Floating on the ancient reds and blues of hand-woven rugs, floating on a sea of magic carpets, we chanted and swayed, swayed and chanted, swayed and chanted in the dim inner light, in that inner sanctum with no windows. Incense wafted lightly, setting off an altered state of consciousness, which for me was enhanced by the vision of the devotee lying on his stomach face to the ground on the Master's right, my left. The Master chanted and swayed, Allah, 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 and the words seemed to emanate from the depths of his soul. My eyes flicked open involuntarily, and I was, in that mystical moment, so attuned through the pulsation of the rhythmic sound that I could discern every open pore of the sheik's sallow cheeks, every differentiated hair in every shade of gray and white that poured from his chin down that undulating chest, rising and falling with the taut softness of his effort. His brown hands rested lightly on their sides upon his knees. I can see those hands now as clearly as I saw them then. Calloused hands, brown hands, hands that worked fields, gripped the handles of wooden barrows, traded goods and coins in the market, dug in the dirt. Fingers relaxed but bent inward, telling a tale of seasoned usage. Allah, 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 he chanted, and his soft and powerful practiced voice drifted through the mosque, resonating outward to the 6 directions, emanating upward to cathedral ceilings, dissipating in the corners like tendrils of smoke from a sacred fire. I chanted with him, just he and I, chanting and chanting, chanting beyond boredom until I felt the pores of my skin open and tingle, open and spark over every inch of my body, my fingers, my toes. Chanting and chanting until I opened my consciousness so wide that I became all emptiness. I became like a great chasm. My body became like a great and black abyss. I became like a dark and open cave, a deep black tunnel. The I of me disappeared, and what remained was empty blackness, spiraling infinitely into the earth, or the past, or the future, or another dimension. I spiraled in, past etchings in the deepest recesses, glyphs and symbols carved in ancient caverns, chipped out by spirits come and gone, and yet to come. Far, far away, as remote as the elusive past, as inaccessible as the ungraspable future, and endless as infinite planes of awareness, a figure stood, statuesque, in the circular portal at the end of the tunnel. It stood framed in the opening, silhouetted in blindingly radiant light. It stood there like an apparition in exile, beckoning me, calling me, moaning to me to follow or to lead. I was not sure which. I discerned this being, and at once I was back in my body, and my whole being began to tingle and shake, pulsing endlessly with electric energy. Then, and this was unmistakable, I felt a presence enter my body. It was as if I recognized a feeling, opened a door onto a memory that sailed endlessly through time and space. This presence filled me. It felt like the undying presence of she who was before time began. I felt like the soul of the world had entered my form. The soul of all entered my form. And in my heart of hearts, I recognized the awesome and auspicious power of the moment. I felt her enter my body through a central core of emptiness, then expand and expand, expanding until she filled my hips, my breasts, the base of my spine, my thighs, biceps and triceps, elbows, the back of my calves, forearms, wrists, hands, feet, fingers, toes, neck, cheeks, scalp, eyes. And I called out inwardly, "Guide me, Mother," for I felt this sacred soul was like a mother or a long-lost sister, and she answered clearly, saying distinctly, "Call my name, call my name." And then she filled my vocal cords, mouth, teeth, tongue with a sound that rose from the middle of the beginning of being. The sound rose, quiet at first, then louder and louder, emanating from my very depths, in and out with the tides of my lungs. Ma, ma, ah, ma. The master called, Allah, Allah. The voice in me called, Amma, Amma. We floated above that ancient geometry of the abstracted tree of life, the beginning of existence, the point at which all things start, and we chanted and chanted, calling into the void and through ourselves the sacred name of the Holy of Holies. I drifted into a great state of peace, tranquil, serene, complete, fulfilled. I felt an immense compassion flood my being, a deep love of all, big and little, vast and minuscule, and I saw the web of all life interconnect and encompass all that is in a shining exuberance. I bore witness in that sacred space to the rarefied essence of pure and endless joy. Glimmering threads of insight began to interweave within me. Empty spaces began to fill. My heart thrilled. My soul delighted. The tapestry of life began to unfurl within and outside me as if the warp and woof of creation stretched and quivered all through my physical form. My spirit, mind, and body became like a thriving fabric, quivering with the vibrant consciousness of universal life. Imagine, if your mind allows, how, in that pure and radiant moment, as I chanted with the Master, electronic circuits seemed to form and interlace. Then, in radiating gold and silver, a voltaic charge began, weak at first, then infinitely stronger, until each and every filament of force and form, within and without, glittered with indescribable potency. The sacred life revealed itself like a dancing message board containing the codified structure of all that is. Patterns shimmered and danced, waking energies long ignored. Tendrils of energetic force raced to awaken muscles, bones, ideas, and memories long neglected, given up for dead. What a feeling of delight, terror, and mysterious portent poured through my form as I began to chant the feminine name of God. Oh, holy, holy, holy. I cannot tell you how that felt. I wanted to laugh. I wanted to sob. I knew she was inside me. I knew that all life is divine. I felt my own divinity. I felt as if I had touched the sacred hymn heard with joy and fortitude, the sacred admonition. You must be willing to walk your own path. Instantly, I awoke to mysteries long untold. Through the eye of my open mind, I witnessed initiations of old, was catapulted into ancient mystic rites. I transmigrated into scenes of rituals, sacraments, purifications, interments, weddings, funerals, and baptisms. In a matter of seconds, stories like moving pictures with acts and scenes, sets and dialogues began to reveal themselves in scores. I saw all this in a matter of moments. Sacred time, they say, moves apart from ordinary time. I reached out in that sacred moment, clipped from time, reached down and gently touched the sedimentary layers of the thin crust of earth beneath me. Suddenly, and without warning, my ascended partner, as if in mid-sentence, stopped chanting. My eyes were closed. My belly, breast, throat, and heart continued to throb with the mother's essence, although I sensed his eyes had flashed open, and now he eyed me with suspicion. I finished the phrase and stopped the song, opening my eyes to meet his gaze. His little ripe blueberry pupils sparked and glinted from their narrowed slits, wrinkled with time's etching and the power of the sun. I said nothing, met his eyes with serenity. I opened my eyes wide so he could see. I donned a childlike mask of innocence, yet I felt I could not quite hide the play and laughter that must be leaping from my own eyes. I both knew and knew not what I was doing. Suddenly I started. What if he thought I was the devil? The devil in the shape of a woman. The shift in his posture was barely apparent. The soles of his feet turned upward, exposing them to more light and air. Quietly and with reverence, he said to me, Allah is the first word out of a child's mouth. He said, Allah is the very breath of life. With every breath in this life, we breathe in and out. Allah, Allah. He stopped. I waited for him to continue, but he said nothing. The silence extended infinitely and became uncomfortable. Very quietly and with reverence, I whispered, Mama. The baby speaks, Mama. I am a mother. I have seen this. The devotee was alarmed. He pushed himself up into a seated position and said, Master, this is a highly educated woman, a doctor. She has something important to say. Had those 4 eyes not been so intent upon me at that very moment, I might have pinched myself to make sure I was not dreaming. But then I was dreaming, was I not? Dreaming the dream of life on earth? How very strange, how very unpredictable and magnificent, poetic, synchronistic. It seemed funny, too. I wanted to laugh. Clearly, keenly intelligent and sensitive, imagining I was making some kind of statement about women or the position of women, in his heavily accented English, the master said, Muhammad was the last prophet. He brought equal opportunity for women. Before Muhammad, he said, women could not inherit property. They were bought and sold, possessed and raped as men desired. They could not walk in the country. They were not educated. They were for man's use, no more than animals. Under Islam, he said, a man must fully support his wives. He cannot take a wife unless he can support her fully, and she must consent before there is marriage. It takes a long time for change, he said, but Muhammad said, over time, women will achieve full equality. That time is coming. I sat very straight, my back and head aligned. Looking deeply into his eyes, I said, yes, Muhammad was the last prophet, and what he did was very great, very great. Moses also, and Jesus. Moses was brought out of the water into freedom and received the message from the burning bush. Yes, he was great. Son, son, called the bush, the place you are standing is sacred ground. Take the suffering sons of Israel out of Egypt and build for them a holy nation. Moses was great. His eyes never dimmed, nor his vision abated. And then came Jesus, the Son of God, Christ. He conveyed illumination through his words, his hands, his image. He called to his people, heal the sick, raise the dead, cleanse lepers, cast out demons. Freely you received, freely give. The kingdom of light, he said, is like a mustard seed, smaller than all other seeds. But when it is grown, it is larger than all the plants of the garden, so big that the birds of the air nest in its branches. Love my sons, and you will be sons of the Most High. He rose from the dead then, and he too was very great. And then came Muhammad, the highly praised. The angels of God, they say, opened his heart, opened it up, and poured in light. Cry out, the Lord called to him on the famous night of power and excellence. What shall I cry, Muhammad called, and the Lord called to his son, cry, cry, in the name of thy Lord, cry, thy Lord is wondrous kind. And the Lord sent to Muhammad rules for the details of daily living and charged the prophet to bring his message to the people through the Quran. Yes, I said, God is revealed through the prophets, Abraham, Moses, Jesus, and Muhammad. Through Abraham, the truth of monotheism. Through Moses, the Ten Commandments. Through Jesus, the Golden Rule. Through Muhammad, the holy gift of administration. Yes, Muhammad, I said, was the last prophet, and he was great, very great. And here I felt my hands move into prayer position in front of my heart. My body leaned dramatically forward, my eyes closed. I sat there in my black dress with bare feet, carrying a volume of women's erotica, which I shall later explain, and I began to whisper. There is a new prophet coming. And through her, man and woman will rise up as one. Muhammad was the last prophet, but there is a new prophet coming, and she is a woman. A sidelong glance was exchanged between the master and the devotee. I knew I had spoken blasphemy. I was amused in a way at their horrified expressions and also at the fact that I saw they heard me and were taking me seriously. I was also afraid all of a sudden for reasons I could not explain. I was sorry I had given my business card to the devotee. At this moment, I would have greatly preferred to remain anonymous. Who was I, anyway, to sit there chanting and swaying with this master of masters from across the ocean? How I came to be there and how deeply they listened to me was something that left me nothing short of dumbfounded. I was having my car serviced at a dealership in the San Francisco Bay Area near where I live. I was just waiting when I remembered that there was a bookstore on the corner and that one of my students had just published a couple of chapters under a pen name in a book of erotic stories by women. These were the first two stories she had ever written, and all of a sudden this book, and more particularly her work, was being acclaimed in the book review section of the New York Times. Amazing. I bought the book at the corner bookstore. Bag? No thanks. I was walking down the street looking at this book, reading an occasional passage. Well, what does an orgasm look like? Like fish shooting out in all different directions from a pebble dropped in their pond. And pretty soon I was wishing I had asked for a sack, brown paper. I had no coat, no purse, no car, no place at all to hide this explosive volume. I tucked the book under my arm and strolled. Halfway up the block, I came upon a movie theater where years earlier I had seen a film about Mahatma Gandhi. I leaned in the open doorway. Isn't this how it always happens? I leaned in the doorway and saw all the seats were gone. There was no popcorn, no soda, only a huge empty theater filled with piles and piles and piles of gorgeous Persian rugs. May I help you? Oh, no thanks. I was just remembering when this was a movie theater. Oh, the man was genial and smiled at me. What did you see here? Gandhi. Oh, where did you sit? Well, I said, laughing, both of us making a joke out of his line of questioning since the movie theater had obviously been gone a long time. I always sat in the middle of the middle. Feel free to go back and sit there. Sit in your usual spot. Sit on the rugs. Please, please, sit on the rugs. Please, sit. I walked down toward the front of the theater. He followed me. Right about the middle of the middle, I had a strange feeling. You know, I said to him, this doesn't feel like a movie theater. It feels like a sacred place. He narrowed his eyes and beckoned, saying, Come with me. I do not need to tell you that this man turned out to be the devotee, that we took off our shoes and went upstairs, that we were really in a mosque, that he laid a feast of tea and rice and vegetables before me, that we shared this bounty with a man who had just escaped from Bosnia and another who had fled out of Egypt, that we discussed Islam and the position of women in Islamic countries, that I gave him my business card, that it turned out that the Master of Masters had just arrived from far-off lands, that the devotee learned I was a doctor, that I was just about to be ordained as a minister, that I said a new prophet was coming and she was a woman, that the men raised their eyebrows, that the devotee took me to the master, that he prostrated himself upon the floor, that he entreated the master to listen to me, that the master and I chanted, and that all the time the book with the naked woman on the cover was sitting at my side on top of the antique red hand-woven carpet. Chapter 2, The Teacher. 2 weeks later. To all events, there is a sacred interior. On the surface, events move within the confines of time and space in an ongoing context of circumstances, one event leading into the other, each in its proper time and sequence, each in alignment with what has been and what is to come. On a deeper level, events happen out of time, out of place. Events are parallel and synchronous. Events happen as endless metaphors for layers and layers and layers of knowing. The event in the mosque, which happened only a month prior to my ordination, was a metaphor that stretched itself deeper and deeper and deeper within me until it touched the deepest folds of my being, until it reached my soul and burst out on the other side with wakened tendrils racing toward the deepest codes of sacred knowledge. I telephoned my teacher on the East Coast, the Archbishop of the church in which I had studied for 4 years, interfaith, non-denominational, and international, and was scheduled to be ordained at summer solstice. And I told her what had happened, how I wound up in the mosque, how strange it felt, how timeless, how mythical. I asked her if she had any mystical interpretations as to what the experience was all about. She said, Why, Pamela, dear, it is entirely clear. You have walked this earth for many lifetimes. Do you remember Atlantis? Do you mind my saying this? I know it may sound strange to you. I don't know if you want to hear it. She laughed. Oh, no, please tell, I responded. I was skeptical, but definitely curious. She said, "You were a teacher in the Temple of Wisdom. Do you remember? You were paid by the state at Poseidonus to teach philosophy, mathematics, and ethics. Atlantis had a technological legacy of thousands of years. You were bridging the gap between the technical and the spiritual. You're doing that today, bridging technology and spirit." Inwardly, I smiled at the irony. The Archbishop did not know that I have frequently lectured on the subject of ethics in Western medicine. "Do you remember your students?" she asked. "They were all ages. Anyone could come to your classes as long as they could understand the subject matter and were motivated. Even children could come, but you refused to talk down to them. They had to be capable of following the information as you presented it." Then her story became even more outlandish. The Archbishop said, "Before you came to the planet Earth, you were already adept at teaching and healing. Do you remember? But there came a time when the people on those planets became so advanced in healing themselves, they no longer needed your skills. You thought, what's the use of staying here just to set a broken leg every now and then? You chose to come to Earth, the most difficult of all the planets, where you believed you could serve. You wanted to serve. Yes, my dear, you came and offered your heart, but in so many lifetimes your heart has been thwarted. You wanted to give, but so many times your desire to serve has been thrown back in your face. Do you recognize that feeling?" I had to admit I did. "Also, Pamela, there were many times you desired spiritual initiation and something went wrong, usually because you were female. As a woman, you certainly had your go-arounds with the Roman Catholic Church." The Archbishop laughed. "You have had many, many incarnations on earth and beyond, and in each you have learned something about service and something about the path of your soul. The focus of your soul, Pamela dear, is freedom. In this century, you have rebelled in order to know freedom. You have pushed away from authority, from institutions that would control your thoughts and your destiny, from patriarchal gods. You have pushed away from authority just as you did in the Mosque. The focus of your soul is freedom. This planet is not a giver of that concept, so you have rebelled." The Archbishop was right about that. My nature is entirely rebellious and always has been. I've never been able to respond well to anyone's orders. Perhaps that is conditioned by my family history. My father left the church in a strong Irish Catholic family. My mother's family, who settled Utah with Brigham Young, walked away from the Mormons. My teacher said, "Now, my dear, you will remember everything. You will gather together your ancient family, and they will surround you and teach you. All memories will awaken. At your ordination," she continued, "you will receive the spark. I will lay my hands on your head. My teacher on the astral plane will lay hands on my head, and his teacher will be there doing the same thing, and on and on and on and back and back and back until the spark is flowing through all the hands from the source of all being. Your teachers on the astral plane will bear witness to this event. The cosmic fire will be transferred to you, and it is up to you, my dear, to receive it and to direct it into all areas of your life. It is now time to remember the lessons you have learned through the course of your incarnations. For now, meditate. Call into yourself the highest, most loving, and instructive powers in the universe, and the path of your soul will be revealed. You will soon know why you said, 'There is a new prophet coming, and she is a woman.' Then, at summer solstice, let the wings of angels fly you across the country to our humble ceremony, where the spark of your ministry will be ignited." Chapter 3. The Meditation. The next day. On the cliffs over the Pacific Ocean, glittering in the sun like a moving field of diamonds, I sat in silence, without judgment, contemplating the path of my soul. Day after day, as I prepared for ordination, I fasted, waited, and thought. I blocked external stimulation and taught myself to go into a trance. I taught myself to slow down, to concentrate on the flame of a burning candle. What sound is heard at the center of fire? What color is seen at the center of flame? I asked myself these questions and contemplated the source of being. I contemplated the meaning of the spark, the nature of cosmic fire. I meditated deeply on the flame of the candle, contemplating the heart of fire sinking down, down, down in meditation. At first, my thoughts came fast and furiously. It was hard to slow down, hard to let go. But after a while, thoughts came further and further apart. It seemed as if each idea, one by one, like moths in darkness, became attracted to the flame. Ideas began to drift into fire, were singed and burned, transformed into smoke, and wafted away. One by one, thoughts expired. Ideas became drifting smoke. My mind opened up and emptied. My heart emptied. My spirit emptied. Gradually, I became cleansed and purified by fire, burned and turned to ashes, emptied of preconceived notions, until I began to see that at the core of everything was nothing at all. Nothing. No thing. In nothingness exists capacity. Potential requires space to grow. The deeper I went, the more I awakened. I felt a surge of spiritual force like heat, light, or electricity. I felt this force begin to expand within me. It was like a small flame that grew and grew and grew into a large fire. It grew like the fire of truth expanding into infinity. I opened completely to anything that might occur. I called into my consciousness all the positive, loving, and instructive powers of the universe. And it was then, when I was in a deep, trance-like meditation above the sparkling sea, deep in emptiness, engulfed at the center of flame, my guide appeared. He appeared before me, not like a man, but more like a vision of love and beauty in the center of the empty diamond field of my open consciousness. He appeared as a shimmering entity I could not quite discern. It was not as if he were actually standing there, but as if I saw him internally, a moving picture behind my eyes. I could not make out the setting from which he spoke, but I knew he was speaking to me from a particular place. It felt like a white and gold enclosure, a round temple filled with knowledge. It felt like another dimension or another planet. He spoke, but his lips did not move, nor did he speak English. And yet I understood everything he said. He spoke to me telepathically and showed me pictures telling me, this is the time. This is the place. He said it was time to awaken, time to remember, time to recall the reason for my existence, the vow I had entered into. He said it was time for me to remember why I had come to earth, time to awaken to the calling of my mission. I am your contact, he said, your brother, your twin. I stayed behind when you and the others emanated, so all of you would have a contact point. You selected difficult tasks. You are on your own, but we are still here to help and guide you. And now the window is open, the lines of communication are activated. This experience was very strange to me. Completely unlike my usual meditations, I felt this guide could read my thoughts. He said, the reason the memories of your place of origin did not surface earlier in your life, dear sister, is because it was critically important for you to live the experience of Earth so that you could understand the Earth world from the inside. Only when you are on the inside can you be effective. You knew this from the beginning. You knew how important it was for you to temporarily forget your source. All of you knew this. Then he named several of my acquaintances and told me they had emanated in the same wave. He described to me their missions. He showed me moving pictures of each taking his or her vow to serve. He told me about my children, how even though they were born to me on earth, they too radiated from the same emanation, as did my mother. Then he showed me a memory of me taking my own vow of service just prior to crossing the river of forgetfulness on the passage to earth. I saw myself vowing solemnly to, quote, affect the philosophy and values of the people. I witnessed these entities taking their vows. They stood in a circle and spoke telepathically. Clearly, they were not male or female at all, but androgynous, tall, thin, hairless, and golden. They were not wearing clothing as we know it on earth. Then their bodies changed into the bodies of men and women. As they became human, they were dressed in white clothing, cross-cultural, cross-temporal, ceremonial vestments that might belong to any period or place in Earth's history. I became a brown-haired, brown-eyed, dark-skinned woman of indeterminable race or ethnicity. I was wearing a long white dress. Then I programmed my thoughts to emanate to Earth. The way we came to Earth was not in a metal spaceship with flashing lights or in any other material contraption. We came through a channel of consciousness. This channel was activated by the power of intention alone. Many of us left in the same emanation at the same time, but we arrived on Earth in different time periods and different generations. Riavek, that seemed to be the guide's name as closely as I can translate it, said, I will show you lifetimes that have affected you. You will remember through viewing these lives what you have been and what the world on earth has been, and then you will remember who you are. You will be able to do what your heart of hearts says is right. When you know how you came to be as you are, you will be able to build a firm base of clear knowledge from which to work. You will have clear insight and presence of mind. You will realize what aspects of the earth world can and cannot be controlled. Your success will be based on your ability to change that which is changeable and to detach from that which cannot be moved. You will attain the power of initiative through knowing what has been. Through understanding what has been, the nature, depth, and mutability of what is will be made perfectly clear. When you understand the nature of the present, you will also know the nature of the future. The present results from what has been. The future is born from what is. When you come into the full realization of this, you will be able to fulfill your mission. Riavek told me that Earth is viewed as one of the most visually entrancing dimensions in the system, the garden planet, small but full of majesty, exquisitely sensual, an olfactory feast, vibrant, verdant, mysteriously alive. That is partly why I chose to come. I chose to defend the ancient mountains, shifting deserts, rolling plains, tropical and icy seas, skies of the most astonishing pink, lavender, orange, baby blue, cobalt, and turquoise, aurora borealis, glaciers, volcanoes, winds that uproot trees, creatures with wings and fins, fur, flowers that unfold by day and night, giving off fragrances that entice the heart to love. A planet of dualities, elsewhere unknown, hundreds of nations with plans, hopes, and dreams, the quintessential experiment. He said, throughout the system, all beings realize that the earth world's existence is threatened, that anger, greed, and recklessness, technological excess, and production-oriented intervention in natural processes threatened to destroy the sphere. Technical intervention in war, the battle for resources, values clashing values. That is why critical philosophical reflection is so important at this time. Now, you, Riavek said, like the sisters and brothers with whom you left here, must awaken. One by one, stationed all over the earth, you will remember your origins and begin to pursue your missions. Your mission is to affect the philosophy and values of the earth world, dear sister. You chose this mission yourself, of your own free will. Do not focus on the outcome of this work, but attend to the process of creation. Be with the process. Enact the drama of your current life as if it matters. Seek peace, balance, and considered action. Begin to rise to the task before you by observing the lives you have lived, which I will begin to reflect back to you in your next meditation. Observe these lives with detachment. Learn from them, then let any negative effects they have created within you leave your earthly body. In this way, you will attain wisdom and be freed from the constraints of the past. You will gain the wisdom and understanding of nearly 6,000 years of Earth's history. You will begin to understand aspects of the formation of Earth's thought patterns. When you begin to understand these ideas, you will begin to understand the nature of the soul of life. Tomorrow, we begin. Chapter 4, The Explanation, The Possibilities. Riavek attended me diligently. Over the course of the next interlude, he showed me lives, all incarnations of what I would call holy women. These lives span thousands of years of Western history: ancient Sumeria, ancient Egypt, Old Testament times, ancient Greece, the early Christian period, the Dark Ages, the Reformation. I witnessed all these lives and felt that I was part of them. I felt I was contained by them, even as I contained them. Witnessing the revelation of this information was intensely emotional. I laughed and cried, made love, ate, danced, and entered sacred initiation through the eyes of all the characters. I was in them, and they were in me. We were one, inseparable. I felt I was witnessing the journey of my own soul on the path to self-expression. Each life took me closer to the ultimate destination. My rational mind, however, not as impressionable as my heart or as emotionally reactive, sought explanation for what I observed. 4 possibilities occurred to me. The experience of past lives could be attributed to imagination, genetic memory, or tapping a pool of telepathically received information. I could also not discount the possibility that I was experiencing actual past life incarnations. Number 1, imagination. I have long believed that the human imagination is extraordinarily creative. If I ask you to close your eyes and imagine a tree, there are very few who will not be able to do it. You will know the type of tree, whether it is a pine tree or an oak, how lush it is, whether it stands alone or in a forest. You will know whether it is a tree you have seen before or a new and different tree. Close your eyes and experiment. Imagine a tree or a past life. What do you see? In part, the ability to imagine opens up as a conscious or subconscious attempt to explain that which seems inexplicable. This is what happens when people create myths to explain the beginning of existence. It also happens when we are seeking to fill gaps in scientific knowledge or even gaps in the continuity or cohesion of our own lives. I like to think imagination opens up, too, for the sheer sake of celebrating its own creativity. It is a thrilling thing when the bounds of thought are pushed ever outward, when the parameters of knowledge are shaken loose, when everyday life is lived as if it is art emerged in its own creation. How refreshing, revealing, and awe-inspiring to see life through an artist's eyes, to witness things of the common world as if one has never seen them before. The artist comes to view the world as a pliable reality, as a fabulously malleable medium of which superb sculpture can be made. Number 2, genetic memory. According to geneticists, I am a walking encyclopedia. When I was the egg, they say, and the tiny fish enfolded by it, 2 sets of chromosomes bonded, 23 from each parent. Each chromosome contained 200 genes. A simple mathematical calculation tells me that almost 10,000 genes lived in my embryonic self, and according to geneticists, each gene contains 1,000 symbols. Each symbol is a bit memory, a fragment of what we know. In a single human cell, there are 10,000 to 100,000 symbolic coded messages. If all the symbolic messages in the 46 chromosomes were written out in words, each of us, they say, could fill 1,300-page volumes. Just think, my parents contain the genes of their parents, I contain the genes of my parents and theirs. What does this mean with regard to memory? If I think back 100 years, can I activate fragments of the lives of my great-grandparents? Might their experiences have been encoded in the chromosomes they passed on, become instinctive, symbolic information lodged at the cellular level of descendants? Could I access 1,000-year-old encoded memories by somehow attuning to the very cells of my body? What if I really contain within every cell skeletal memories of ancient lands, of daily life, of initiations, of executions? What if this is enhanced by my mind's ability, conscious or unconscious, to imagine connective tissue, muscle, sinew, tissue that gives form, sense, and proportion to vague symbolic recollections? Could I explain why my leg aches when doctors can find no known cause? Number 3, tapping the flow of collective information. Ancient schools of mysticism taught that there is a pool of exhaustless information generated from all that is, all that ever has been, and all that ever shall be. It was said that adepts could tap this information and thereby come into what they called sympathy with all existence. With practice, psychic powers would open up, and the seeker would attain the limitless knowledge of past, present, and future. Tapping this information flow, they say, is like tapping a unified field of mind, a mind that exists within and outside of things, as well as before, during, and after their existence. Perhaps I unwittingly stumbled into this arena, the timeless sphere of the universal mind, or the soul of all. This idea raises many questions. What constitutes mind? How extensive is it? What is thought? Does it emanate from mind? Can it be transferred telepathically from one being to another? Is thought vibratory? Might it travel like waves of sound? Could I pick up ideas from someone across the world, from a being in another universe, another dimension? Could I pick up vibrations from a tree, a rock, a river? Could I tap a vibration of what no longer exists or of what is yet to come? As my visionary quest began to open, I felt that all these things and more were not only possible, they were likely. So open did my consciousness become. I began to feel my mind, as well as my creative imagination, was bounded only by whatever I imagined to be a limitation. Number 4, reincarnation. A large proportion of the world's population believes that a mind or spirit inhabits a body, but is not the body. The body is viewed as a temporary house. When the body is no longer functioning, the spirit departs, only to return in a new body. The spirit passes through life on the material plane, incarnating again and again and again in body after body. Each incarnation is dedicated to the growth of the soul. Each soul grows steadily, learning lesson after lesson on the path to achieving oneness with universal life. When a soul first enters a human body, according to Eastern doctrine, it wants nothing more than to taste the delights of earth. The soul progresses through ascending strata of human desires, eventually, with repeated stimulation, becoming disenchanted or bored with one desire after another, until the only remaining desire is union with the essence of life itself. Some call this essence God or Goddess. I prefer to think of it as the creative principle, or the anima cosma, the soul of the cosmos. When the individual soul attains union with the soul of the cosmos, there is no more incarnation, because there is no more desire, no more striving, only eternal bliss. Through meditation, I detached my thoughts from everything I had been taught to think, and all possibility opened. I ended up with a multitude of questions. Every question became like a finger pointing to an answer. I felt my imagination open up and flow freely. I felt that the essence of the visions of past lives was contained in the very cells of my body. I felt the images were also contained in my mind. I felt I could enhance these visions through the mysterious workings of creative imagination. The visions also seemed to come from outside my body and mind, as if I were being directed. It was as if I were not only meditating, but being meditated. I was within and outside myself all at once. As I witnessed myself waking myself up, I became teacher, guide, student, and subject. The stories that came to me seemed progressive in some ways and linear, even though they seemed to zigzag through time and space. Some of the lessons learned at later dates seemed less advanced than lessons learned earlier. Still, there was a true feeling of purposeful and successive incarnation. There seemed to be seeds of truth in every rational explanation my mind was creative enough to invent or explore. And now, I share these stories with you, exactly as the scenes unfolded. Judge the process for yourself. Then I will invite you to embark upon your own expansive journey, a journey into past, present, and future, a journey that will take you beyond everything you have ever known.